What is going on, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the major label debut of singer Lizzo. Basically, this album is called "Cause I Love You," and it came out in the spring of 2019. Now, there were a number of variations about this particular album, one of which came out in like the spring or summer of 2019. That was kind of a deluxe edition of this. And then there was a super deluxe edition that came out in the fall that had the extra songs Good as Hell and the Good as Hell remix with Ariana Grande on there. This particular album was a big deal back in 2019, and it helped kick off Lizzo as one of the premier kind of artists thus far in the 2020s. I'd have to say she's definitely one that when she drops a project, it makes a lot of noise, just makes a big splash and that type of stuff. And I definitely see the concept of it. The thing about Lizzo, she kind of had like a slow upstart. Like she was brewing for a while. She had dropped a few projects throughout like the mid late 2010s and stuff. And the actual single Truth Hurts, which was her first number one on the Billboard 100, was a song that actually came out way back in 2017, 2016, something like that. So it had been out for a while. She was kind of like a late bloomer in terms of that particular concept as far as the late success of this particular project. But once this album hit, it really hit its stride. Lizzo was someone that was talked about throughout 2019. I just really remember the crestability of this particular project as far as the success it had. And it had a pretty lengthy run. I mean, from like the tip top beginning of 2019, it lasted until the tip top of 2020, it lasted until about the tip top of 2020, right before the COVID time started, as far as that kind of went. But this was just a real large success. It was something that almost won a Grammy for album of the year at the yeah, it almost won album of the year at the Grammys in 2020 or something like that, 2021, and it definitely made a lot of noise. I would have to say it just had a lot of late singles, just some good affable kind of vibes. And the thing I like about Lizzo's particular songwriting is that this is kind of a little bit different from most of the usual melody stuff that kind of goes along. Like when you think of like Katy Perry or Ariana Grande or like Ashanti or some pop singer that's kind of like that in that sort of sense. She just kind of has like more, like in some cases they're just a lot more homebound and kind of more steadfast as far as a lot of this goes. Like a lot of this album just reminds me of like a pretty day-to-day blue collar type record. I mean, it does have some nightlife, but it kind of has the sense that you're going to go to work the next day and not just be hungover and some of those type moments. Just kind of the more concepts of this, like this more steadfast and just the atmosphere of just that sort of kind of conditions, kind of like if you were to take the blue collar type feel of like Maroon 5 and then just pair it with like a regular day life and day commerce kind of life, you would have that kind of in the sense of what Lizzo kind of does. I know that Maroon 5, but just thinking of like, I know Maroon 5 kind of seems like a strange kind of comparison, but just the concept of someone that kind of makes more kind of makeshift kind of music, just in a sense of kind of having to be day to day and just kind of having more this kind of musicians that kind of have more steadfast kind of music as far as that kind of happens. So I just would say that, but there's a lot of singles on here. There is some recreational fare as far as that kind of happens. It does have some boppish type appeal about it, and I do like the appeal of some of these songs. Lizzo kind of stepped out more on her 2022 album Special, which I do want to get to that one. But this is a pretty interesting project here. I do feel like her songwriting and variety has a lot to offer, and there's just a lot of good. Like she got to the fifth single, which it had been a while since like a pop album or just an overall successful. This is one of the more successful albums I can think of like the past 5 or so years. This is one of the more successful albums I can think of like the past 5 or so years. And this is definitely one that just, had a lot of noise that it made for it. And it's kind of one, like in some cases, folks have said that like Lizzo was kind of an industry plant, but I kind of look after just the sheer success that she kind of had was just kind of out of nowhere. And it just, maybe that's the definition of an industry plant, is it just kind of happens out of nowhere. But I think the songwriting is there. And I do think the concept of it just is original. And this had like a breath of fresh air type feel as far as some of this stuff, as far as the stuff that was kind of going on around this time. So it's a pretty good concept. But there were 5 singles on this particular project. Now, Wikipedia doesn't full blown count the single Tempo, but I originally recognized that as like the second single. Like a few years ago, Tempo was seen as the second single, but they kind of re edited it. As far as that kind of happens, but I'm going to count Tempo as the second single. But the first single is Juice. And this is kind of like a breezy kind of pop pizzazz of a song, I would have to say. It's a nice groove and mid-tempo kind of carefree makeshift song, definitely. And it's just some contemporary but kind of workaday feels that it kind of has. So this is just a real kind of airy, kind of floaty, breezy type one. Just works great for like the spring, early summer, some of those type moments. Just warm weather where the flowers are blossoming and that type of stuff. This really works as like a real breezy kind of song. I just overall like the appeal of it. This kind of, I mean, it can be R&B or pop. I kind of look at this as more of like a pop song, but it's just, I mean, either way, it just works in like that sort of sense as far as that kind of happens. It's a real kind of this atmospheric type song that's just perfect for like outdoor fare, just in like the cityscaping as far as that kind of happens, just being out and about and just kind of a more carefree type tone. I would have to say it's a real breezy one. The second single is Tempo, and this has Missy Elliott on there. This is kind of a denser nightclub flair of a song, I would have to say. It's a nice dance song, but it kind of has mild work. It's a nice dance song, but it has mild workaday vibes about it. Not like that's a bad thing, but it's just kind of something to know. And it's just a good for night. It's a good song for a night out on the town as far as that kind of happens. Just knowing that if you just feel like going out on like a Tuesday, Wednesday night, but you have something to do the next day, it's still a good song to kind of have for that. It's just kind of one that's more steadfast, but still kind of a good, snappy kind of song to kind of have for a little bit of time as far as that kind of happens. Just really like I mean, there's not a ton of nightclub songs on this particular album. Lizzo doesn't really wholesomely step out entirely. And I mean, it's not like she doesn't, but this is kind of one of the few songs that this is pure like electro dance club, something like that. But her and Missy Elliott work pretty damn well as far as that kind of happens. It's a good bounce of a song, I'd have to say. Then the third single is Truth Hurts, which this is a song that kind of came out back in 2017. Like I was saying, this is one that had been out for a while on one of her previous projects. But I kind of look after this one in particular. This is kind of a stellar, kind of empowering, kind of femc bounce of a song, I would have to say. It's a real talk song, definitely, and it has like a snappy, kind of melodic, contemporary feels about it. So this is really catchy one. This is still one of Lizzo's most catchy songs, I'd have to say. It's really nice piano, kind of woozy, kind of sailor-like piano type beat that it just kind of reminds me of. Just a really kind of nice bounce that it kind of has. It's a real nice snappy one. Just one that I can see tons of women kind of cranking out when they're in a pissed off mood, something like that. This works pretty well as far as that kind of happens. Just real talk kind of song, just straightforward kind of one, just a real kind of more just like down to earth kind of song, definitely as far as that kind of happens. Just a nice kind of one to kind of have in like the commerce. This is definitely one like this one, despite the fact that it has bounce, it could probably be like a karaoke song or something like that. This is a song that you could probably hear 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock p.m. This was something I remember hearing on the radio like 3-4 years ago back when Truth Hurts is a song I remember hearing on the radio a lot 3-4 years ago back when this song was being played a whole bunch. I definitely have to say that about that. And then another song that got quite a bit of plays, and this is a quite popular song. This hit like #3 on the Billboard 100. It's the fourth single, Good as Hell. Now, there's two versions of the song on the Super Deluxe that I'm reviewing, and one has Ariana Grande. But this is basically like a good autumn breeze tune. Definitely, I would say it works as like a makeshift kind of day-to-day. It works as like a makeshift day-to-day, get tasks done kind of bop, I would have to say. And it's just kind of a hooky and effective song. So this is definitely one. Almost kind of has like a gospel type feel about it. Just really kind of steadfast and just plain, I would just have to say, just in its approach, not plain in quality, but just plain in its approach. It's pretty humdrum, just mundane almost to a sense of how it kind of happens. It's just really like a nice makeshift song. So a lot of these are kind of like that. I feel like Juice, Truth Hurts, and Good as Hell are all like that. But then the fifth single, Cause I Love You, is kind of like that also. But this is just a real nice one. I mean, either version of the song that you get, either version of the song that you listen to, whether you get the one with whether you listen to the one with Ariana Grande. I mean, Ariana Grande is on the second verse. She kind of enhances the song, but not wholesomely. I feel like the original Good as Hell is just pretty damn good to listen to on its own. So either way, you could listen to it like that. This would have to say, yeah, it's just some good autumn breeze type music. This song just works great for like late October, late September. This is just a real nice autumn breeze of a song. This just works great for late October, November, late September, some stuff like that when the weather's getting cooler as far as that kind of happens. And then I would have to say that the fifth single is Cause I Love You. And this is one that I didn't hear as much, but I think I've heard this song on the radio like once or twice, something like that, I'd have to say. But this is kind of like an uppity kind of pop cut, I would have to say. This is one that works great for like midday kind of workaday traverse, definitely. It's just kind of a simple and real catchy. So I would have to say about this particular one, this one just kind of has like, yeah, there's just like an uppity feel about this particular one. This is kind of the concept about it. It just kind of almost feels like preachy-like and just kind of more choir-like, I would have to say. It just really feels like something like would be like a Broadway play or something you hear in New York or the East Coast, something like that. This really has like a dramatic type feel about it. Real uppity song, but I like the concept of it. This works as like a real nice pop cut that this is a different approach, and it's good that it's pretty dope that Lizzo got to the fifth single and was able to have pretty dope that Lizzo was able to get to the fifth single and have all these songs chart. So it's definitely a good concept about it, I would have to say. But like I was saying, the Super Deluxe Edition has 16 songs on there, and out of those 16, I wound up recommending to you 10 and a half. So out of those 16 songs, I wound up recommending to you 10 and a half. So the Almost song is the Good as Hell remix with Ariana Grande. But I would have to say the five songs I don't recommend would be Jerome, Crybaby, Better in Color, Heaven Help Me, and there's one other one, Water Me. So there just were some productions I didn't enjoy as much. Like Heaven Help Me and Better in Color were just some ones I didn't vibe with quite as much. These were just not quite as affable type songs that didn't have the catchy kind of connectability of songs like Tempo or songs like Good as Hell or Cause I Love You or some of those type ones, or especially Juice, some of those type ones. Just kind of felt like these were just kind of more steadfast, kind of homely type ones that just didn't have the sheer kind of just electricity that I was looking for. It's the same thing with Water Me. That one just didn't quite have a vibe that was really, I didn't get the vibe quite as much with Water Me, I would have to say. And Jerome and Crybaby were just kind of some extra songs that just did, that kind of felt more of like filler. So there's just some ones on here that just kind of didn't really have like the sheer kind of connectable type vibes as far as it kind of went. Now, Lizzo definitely has some excellent songwriting, but I feel like some of these are just kind of more homely and steadfast. And like I was saying, this album really could have used another song like Tempo, something like that. Not to say, I mean, I know I usually say that about albums that they could use more nightclub songs, but I definitely feel like with Lizzo, it's just an extra short supply on this particular project. There's definitely like some city hopping kind of jive on here, and there's some moments for just being out and about, but it's just kind of in a more kind of mundane kind of task, like maybe just picking up like some books, picking up like some toothbrushes at Target or something like that, those type things, or just getting like a shirt at like at a clothing store, something like that. Just more mundane type feels more so than the flashiness of going out and getting crunk. Some of those type moments as far as that kind of happens. Some of these are just kind of more stead, and the concept is, I mean, there's some good moments for that. I definitely feel like songs like Cause I Love You and Like a Girl and Good as Hell and some of those type moments really work for that sort of concept, but sometimes they don't. That's just kind of the thing. But yeah, to talk about some more of the songs I recommend on here, there is another song that's kind of like Tempo that's great for stepping out, and there is another song that's great for stepping out that I misspoke a bit when I said that there weren't many songs like Tempo. There is at least one other one. I would say that's the song Boys. This is kind of a good bouncy outing fare, I would have to say. This is a solid dance gem and an easy interchangeable cut with Nightlife, I would have to say, and just overall has like a riveting feel. So this is a pretty nice one. This one definitely has like some mid-tempo bounce. It just really feels like a pretty central time for stepping out and just having a good time when you're getting ready to dance, something like that, and just have like an overall nice groove to kind of have. Really works as like a good pair. And this one's a little bit more kind of alternative, I would say adult kind of contemporary more so than Tempo, but I kind of feel like these are both good, nice ones to kind of have for that. And then Lingerie is kind of like a nice slow groove, kind of soulful type tune. This is like a slow groove kind of kickback tune, I would have to say. This is a slow groove kind of kickback tune, I would have to say. It's got smooth vibes, and the song has smooth vibes and a cozy kind of soulful ambience about it. And it's just a slower song highlight off this album, I would have to say. So it's definitely kind of almost like a Marvin Gaye type R&B type tune, I would have to say. This works in that sort of sense. It's a real nice slow groove of one. I mean, Lizzo can be R&B. I think she likes to refer to herself more as like a pop artist. That's kind of the concept about it. But I would have to say that's kind of, I do look at this kind of being more of like a soulful type one. There's not a ton of R&B on here, I would have to suppose. When I think about it, for the most part, most of the R&B just kind of stems more from like songs like Juice and Lingerie, but there's really not much R&B on here. When you think of folks like Ashanti or Tinashe or Mary J. Blige or Beyonce, there's not really songs in that sort of format. Lingerie is like a soulful type song. And then like Exactly How I Feel has Gucci Mane on there, and it's a pretty good cameo from him. He has Gucci Mane kind of has a funny part in his verse when he talks about please step away from the Bentley, as far as that kind of happens. It did like that concept, but this is kind of like a jazzy kind of city stepping out type tune, I would have to say. It's cozy weather. This is some cozy weather and kind of candid, peppy workaday type feels that this song kind of has, I would have to say. And it's just a good fraternized kind of bop, I would have to say. So this is definitely a pretty nice one. It says real kind of jazzy type feel. Definitely like the concept of this particular one. This is a pretty similar one to like it has a little bit more pizzazz than Juice, a little bit more kind of like energy than Cause I Love You, but it's the same kind of concept just within that kind of humdrum, just kind of just whether it's just like a mid-sized city or a large city, something like that, just kind of city stepping just in a sense, but it kind of feels so casual. It's the concept about this particular one. This kind of feels like, this really feels like more residential type romps, more so than nightclub stepping and Friday night type weekend fare, but it's just kind of some good kind of late day type fare for not being at work, but just the concept of having some good feels about it. That's a nice one. Another hit song that's kind of like an in-between song between Juice and Tempo, I'd have to say, is Soulmate. This is pretty much like a breezy kind of pop jazz of a song, I would have to say. It's similar to Juice, definitely, like I was saying, saying. It's just a vibrant and kind of perky vibe that this song particularly has. It's just a real nice vanilla kind of afternoon hit. So this is just one to kind of listen to, just being in the vehicle, something like that. Just got done with work, just kind of listening, or really just being in the vehicle this midday, whether you're just getting lunch or something like that. This really works for like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock p.m. type stuff. This kind of vanilla, this kind of atmosphere, just for having a good vibe and feeling real good. It's a pretty good feel good song, I would have to say. This has some good kinetic energy, and Lizzo does have some good energy on this particular album. She has some good spark of songs, like I feel like Juice, Tempo, Truth Hurts, Good as Hell, Soulmate. These are all ones that just have some vibrant energy about them. Boys is a pretty good one for that. There's just some good ones that kind of have those concepts. Lizzo has pretty kinetic type energy on this particular album, so it's a good concept. And then Like a Girl is another highlight. This is the second song you hear off this particular album. This is just like Cause I Love You, the title track. I would have to say this is a prim and proper kind of pop bustle of a song. I would have to say it's very similar to Cause I Love You, the title track, like I was saying. And it's just less uppity, but it's radio ready. So this is another one. There's a lot of songs that are just pretty radio ready on this particular album. This is just a pretty, this overall commercial type album that just had a lot of shine, just ability to do it. I just feel like the songwriting is just good with some of these. This works pretty well. This is another kind of makeshift type song. I'd have to say this just works in the same fashion as Cause I Love You. This is just kind of midday workaday traverse as far as that kind of happens. Just has the same concept about it. This is just like Cause I Love You, just a little bit less uppity. I would have to say it's the same kind of concept, just a lot of these. Yeah, but that takes care of the album. So I'd have to say, in terms of what I'm going to score this album, me basically recommending 10.5 songs out of 16. I'm going to go ahead and, so me recommending 10.5 songs out of 16 on this particular album. I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 7.75 out of 10. I feel like I would almost give this album an 8 with 5 singles and a lot of vibrant energy and overall great songwriting and this overall compellingness that this particular project kind of has. I feel like it pretty much would almost deserve an 8, but I kind of look after it. There are a certain amount of songs that kind of bog down this particular project, and it does have a pretty steadfast and kind of homely feel that doesn't always hit. And that's kind of the thing about it. There's just more than a few songs. It's kind of the concept as far as that kind of happens. I mean, this is definitely a pretty stellar project and one of the most notable. This is definitely a pretty stellar project and just overall notable, just something that's notable across like the past 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. But I would just have to say that's kind of the concept about it. The social score, though, I'm going to go ahead and the social score is kind of tricky, but I'm going to go ahead and give the social score like a 9 out of 10. Now, I know because I said there's not a lot of nightclub songs on this particular album that it kind of feels like maybe that's not quite the social compellingness of this particular project, but I do feel like Lizzo's personality is pretty social and affable. There's definitely like some blue collar and steadfast type gems on here that just really work for that day-to-day kind of lifestyle and just stuff like that. And there is some good nightlife in that sort of sense in just a more regular fashion. So there are some moments, 5 singles, plenty to talk about, affable personality, just overall good songwriting and catchiness and hookiness and good productions on here, I would have to say. So it's a good concept. So it gets a 9 out of 10 social. In terms of the future, like Lizzo dropped an album in the summer of 2022, so that's her most recent project. And I'd have to say she does have some other EPs from like the late 2010s I would have to look into. But this is an overall pretty charming project, has a lot of compellingness about it for the most part. And I just would have to say I'm going to have to see what's up with Special. But for now, this is a pretty steady one. I just would say there's just some good charm about it.